In America's most populous state, a quiet nut is at the center of a loud fight over water, wildlife, and the future of farming in the West. In California, where roughly 4 out of every 8 almonds eaten worldwide are grown, booming global demand has turned this crop into both a symbol of prosperity and a flashpoint in a deepening resource crisis. A century ago, almonds were a side bet for farmers in California's Central Valley, another experiment in the region already rich with fruits, cattle, and grapes. Today, they are multi-billion-dollar powerhouses, harvested, processed, and shipped to more than 90 countries, from snack aisles in Europe to health food stores across the United States. Over the past decade, the almond market has roughly quadrupled, helping the crop rival, and in some areas, overtake grapes as the farmer's choice in the Golden State. That boom has fundamentally reshaped the landscape of the Central Valley. More than 6,500 farms now grow almonds, carpeting once open land with neat irrigated orchards that stretch to the horizon. In the north, around towns that proudly brand themselves the almond capital of the world, families who planted their first trees in the 1930s now manage third-generation operations built on the nut that changed their fortunes. But in the southern San Joaquin Valley, the story looks very different. This is naturally a desert, a place where water has always been imported, engineered, and fought over. As almond acreage expanded, growers began pumping ever more groundwater to keep their trees alive, especially as surface supplies grew unreliable during years of historic drought. Along Highway 46, oil and gas rigs give way to vast orchards, including those owned by corporate giants that have built empires here in less than a generation. One of those major producers turned to an unusual lifeline: underground water banks, where the company purchased and stored state-managed supplies to draw on when rivers ran low. In nearby communities, where taps were sputtering and wells were running dry, that strategy fueled anger and a sense of injustice. Residents watched almond orchards stay lush while they were warned their towns were on the verge of running out of water completely. To many, it raised a stark question: whose thirst counts more, people or trees? Critics argue that the math is simple and unforgiving. Almonds require significantly more water than many traditional valley crops, and unlike seasonal plants, trees cannot simply be fallowed during a dry year without destroying the long-term investment. Some estimates suggest the new orchards account for around 1/10 of California's entire water use, a staggering share in a state buffeted by climate change and recurring droughts. For activists, this is a textbook case of an industry digging its own grave, betting its future on a resource that is visibly running out. The industry's leaders push back, insisting the core problem is not the nut, but the way water is managed. They point out that water has always been a contentious issue in California and say growers are adapting to the limits they face. For farmers, the stakes could not be higher. If their trees die in a prolonged drought, it can take years for new plantings to mature and bear a profitable harvest. Already, some fields are being abandoned, early warnings of what a drier future might mean for this crop. Water is not the only vulnerability built into this booming business. Every February, as almond blossoms blanket the valley in white and pink, the pollination season begins, and with it, the largest managed bee migration on Earth. Around 2 million honeybee hives are trucked in from across the United States, from Florida and Maine to Texas, just to pollinate California's orchards. It is an astonishing logistical feat, and a risky one. Packing so many bees into one region creates ideal conditions for pests and diseases to spread from hive to hive. With bee populations under pressure nationwide, the cost of renting hives has climbed, and almond growers are forced to limit certain pesticides that could kill their fragile seasonal workforce. Farmers talk openly about sleepless nights, fearing what a bad bee year on top of a bad water year would mean for their crop. In response, researchers and progressive growers are experimenting with new strategies. Some are raising solitary native bees, like the blue orchard bee, coaxing them out of winter hibernation just in time to work the blooming trees. Others are breeding self-pollinating almond varieties, designed to reduce, though not eliminate, the need for honeybee hives per acre. The goal is not to walk away from bees, but to loosen the industry's dependence on a single, increasingly fragile system. At the processing plants, the ripple effects of water and bee shortages are already visible in prices. Managers say consumers are paying more for almonds than they ever expected, but demand continues to grow, fueled by the nut's reputation as a healthy, protein-rich snack. That consumer loyalty has given cooperatives leverage to push growers toward more sustainable practices by paying premiums for quality and low defect rates instead of sheer volume alone. On the farms, that shift is starting to change how water is used. Old flood irrigation methods are giving way to micro sprinklers that target water directly to the roots, guided by high-tech monitoring systems that track how much moisture the trees actually need. Instead of dumping a fixed amount of water on a fixed schedule, growers are learning to match irrigation to real-time conditions, applying less on cooler days, more during heat waves. It's a quiet revolution in how California's most controversial crop is managed. Still, even the industry's own experts admit that growth cannot continue indefinitely. Land, water, and pollinators are finite, and the almond boom has pushed all three close to their limits. Community advocates argue that California stands at a defining moment, with enough water to go around if the state is willing to rethink who gets what and why. Farmers, too, know that markets change, prices fall, and no golden egg lasts forever. For now, almond orchards remain a powerful engine of profit in rural California, shading the desert and feeding the world. But beneath their blossoms lies a harder question for the American West. How long can a thirsty crop flourish in a drying land, and who will pay the price if it cannot?